Lordy Lord, sorry about that, everybody. I had a little technical difficulties, but today we're going to go over reasons why women themselves said they were cheating and take note of some of their explanations and rationalizations. And some of it is brutal, to be honest, but it's also pretty interesting and telling. And I think it's important to go over it so at least we're prepared. And notice also some of the guys who disrespected themselves in the process here. So let's take a look. We got two separate articles, one from Men's Health and one from the Huffington Post. The Huffington Post one, that one has a little more of a motive and narrative they want to put out there. But here's the first one, right? It was just the excitement. It was just the excitement. I had been with my boyfriend for 7 years, and he was only my second sexual partner. We had talked about maybe experimenting more together, but we weren't on the same page. And here's the key. Also, weirdly, I was uncomfortable to experiment with him. Now, that is very interesting. That means that she kind of put him in a category where he was just the safe guy, the provider, probably guy, and she didn't want to be the wild woman with her. Now, you hear some guys talk about this. You hear Rolo talk about this, where he talks about older married women that say to younger women, there was a part of my heart and things I couldn't be with my husband that I did do and was with other guys. Very interesting. So, weirdly, she wasn't comfortable to experiment with her boyfriend. When I cheated on him with someone from work who I knew he would never meet, it was exciting. I felt sexy again. I was touched in a different way than I'd known for so long. It only happened once, but it felt unreal. It did boost my life with my boyfriend. Look at that rationalization and justification that her cheating boosted her life with her boyfriend. I felt confident again, willing to try new things with him. He never knew. Why should I tell him? It would hurt him too much. We split up 3 years later, but for different reasons. So look at that. She won't tell him because it would hurt him. But she was able to rationalize it to herself as I'm willing to try new things and it made me feel confident again. And why should I tell him? It would only hurt him after all. It's very silly. Oh boy. Very silly and interesting that happens. I was going to interview a woman tomorrow, but she just kind of bailed on it. But here's another one. How could I say no? I broke up with my first real boyfriend of 4 years and immediately fell into another relationship. It was a total rebound that never should have happened, and I stayed for a full year longer than I should have. Now, you see, she's setting the stage there as she never should have been there to begin with, so everything she says after is okay because it never should have been to begin with, so those things justify. I was incredibly unhappy in the relationship, but picked it because it felt safe. I was in Mexico for a conference, and a beautiful Argentinian model approached me. How could I say no? We had a night of 5 hours of epic sex. It was a magical night of chance and opportunity. Magical night of chance and opportunity. I ended up telling my boyfriend what happened, and we decided to stay together. Now, this is an example of the guy that's not really respecting himself here because let's see what happened. But sadly, that was not the end of me and model. I met up a few more times when I was back in Mexico. So, guys, people will treat us how we allow ourselves to be treated. He accepted the cheating, forgave her, it seems like, but that wasn't good enough. It wasn't good enough, and so there was no consequences, there was no boundary, and so it continued, and she did it again. That's what happens when we allow these things to happen and we don't respect ourselves. We allow others to treat us poorly and to disrespect us. And I'd made a meme earlier today where it said there are some relationships that only last as long as they do because someone is willing to put up with disrespect. Don't let that person be you. Next, we became more like roommates. Let's see here. So, I've been dating a guy for 7 years. We were living together for 3 years. After a while, we became more like roommates. Yeah, that does seem to happen sometimes because too much intimate, being too close together kills attraction and intimacy. And when a woman moves in with a man, the attraction on her end drops first. There's been studies on that. We were still best friends, but we hadn't had sex for months. There were also a variety of issues we weren't talking about. I wanted to move somewhere new and exciting, and he wanted to stay close to home to be with his family. I was never super interested in marriage either, and it was important to him. Eventually, I found myself being attracted to a coworker, and one night at happy hour, where is it here? We made out at a booth in the bar. We also went to dinner a few times and had hours long texting sessions. We never had sex, but it felt as bad as if we did. My boyfriend and I broke up, but he never found out. Now, again, this just goes to show you, guys, if you have a gut feeling that your girlfriend might be doing something, chances are that gut feeling is often right. And if a woman's not interested in marriage, it doesn't seem like she's really into what you're into. Why shortchange yourself as a man and try to force the square peg in a round hole? If a woman's not on the same page as you, cut your losses. Cut your losses so situations like this don't happen, right? But if that guy would have found a woman that was on his same wavelength, it could have prevented some of this stuff. And as a guy, I don't want to just ridicule the women with these things because in some of these cases, the man has some responsibility here too. In the previous story, he accepted the cheating and it continued. Womp, womp. In this one, the guy was with a woman that wasn't on the same wavelength as him, and we can see what happened. Next story. All right. My boyfriend could not handle his alcohol, setting the tone here with a smear of her boyfriend. He would be incredibly rude to me when he was drunk. He'd always apologize the next day, but nothing ever really changed. I eventually got fed up, and one night I was out at a bar, and a very successful man was super complimentary of me. He owned companies all over South America and Europe. He was a little arrogant, but handsome, and knew how to get exactly what he wanted. I knew what his end game was. He didn't really care about me, but it was nice to be spoken to in a way that wasn't demeaning. I didn't have sex with him, but I did let him take me back to his apartment where we did everything but intercourse. I told my boyfriend, and our relationship basically unraveled from there. Now, similar here, notice how she didn't really break up. Bef- Before she did this with the Argentinian model or whatever he was, the South American model. And why wouldn't she do that? There's a lot of people, not just women, that they can't leave until they have their replacement. They can't leave until they have found the person's replacement. And that sounds exactly like what was going on here. If he was really so bad and couldn't handle his alcohol, break up. I mean, that's the stand up thing to do, break up. But there was also something interesting to learn here about this guy. When you're attractive, you're a Chad, you're a little arrogant, and you don't really hide what you're after. You're very direct. When you meet a woman in the right time and place, she can be down for it. So there's something to be said about the frame of that guy too and how he was handling himself. Something to learn there. Okay, this wasn't the relationship I wanted. I was dating someone for 2 years. We were young, 24, 25, but it was one of those serious relationships where we'd either have to get married or break up. I wasn't sure I was ready for either, so I asked if we could try opening up the relationship for a little bit, just to see if we were really meant to be. Now, pause there. In this day and age, this is becoming more and more common. Ethical non monogamy, poly, stag, vixen, All sorts of these things, they're out there, right? And here's the thing: if you're a guy, I would say when a woman's asking to open up the relationship, generally not a good sign. Now, there's some poly girls that will say, well, that will deny this to the gills and say, oh, it means nothing. The sex means nothing with other people. I can still have a main partner and love them and still want to sleep with other people. But I've heard stories. I've seen women with my own two eyes. They were poly, and then they finally find someone they really liked and really were into. And what do you know? They didn't want to get with other guys anymore. And they didn't want to share that guy with anyone else either. So if a woman asks you to open up the relationship, probably not a good sign. Most women, when they're really into a guy, they only want to be with that guy. Now, I've been with girls that were in open relationships, right? And I don't know how strong their relationships were, but I mean, when you're having sex with other people, it's certainly you certainly risk catching feelings for the other person. You just do, especially as a woman. And I don't know, I wouldn't be okay with that as a man because to me, it's playing with fire. So, and let's go on there. So we asked if we could open the relationship just to see whatever. Of course, in hindsight, that showed me, that was my gut telling me that this wasn't the relationship I wanted. Typically, with our arrangement, so he agreed to opening up the relationship, what I did wouldn't be considered cheating except for the fact I slept with his best friend. Now, isn't that a dagger? And granted, as Tate would say, any guy that would do that to his guy friend, to his man, to his bro, not the kind of guy to have in your life anyway. And when you have good friends, they wouldn't even dream of doing that to you. A guy that puts a woman in sex over his male friendships, no bueno. No bueno. And then actually, I've heard Tate say before also about how he only wants to be with dudes that can get women easily because of this very reason. He said that guys that aren't very good with women, it's only a matter of time when, if the opportunity arises, they'll put women in sex over their guy friends, over radically respecting themselves. And that's not something he wants in his life. And I can totally get it. I totally get that. Radical self respect over everything. And when you're good with women and you can have sex whenever, it loses its power over you. It's like the expression that F.J. Shark said in the classic How to Be the Jerk Women Love. As it turns out, money was exactly like sex. When you don't have it, it's all you think of. But when you do have it, you think of other things. So keep that lesson in mind too. And if you haven't read that book, check it out. No one really talks about that book in the space, but it was a great book. 6. My suspicions were confirmed. I was living with my boyfriend for about a year. It was good for the most part, but we would have epic fights. I also was highly mistrustful of him. I was convinced he was cheating on me, and every time I asked him, it would explode into a marathon argument. Now, I'm not saying she's narcissistic, but often narcissistic people will project, but they will project what they are doing themselves. So keep that part in mind here too. Eventually, one day, I snooped on his phone, and my suspicions were confirmed. As I would say in Yoda's voice, look into her phone, at only pain you will find. I was never able to prove if he actually slept with another woman, but there were enough naked pictures of other women on there to make me not even really care. I downloaded Tinder, and that afternoon I was hooking up that night. So that's how easy it is, of course, for women to have sex. We all know this. And she found pain in the phone. She couldn't even prove he cheated. Maybe he's sexting with these girls. I don't know. But that's all it took for her. I was tired of always carrying the load. I was married for 25 years. About 18 years into my marriage, I was so unhappy. I was the sole breadwinner. Now, that's something I want to actually talk to Ryan Stone about this here because he was talking the other day about how you don't need to be the breadwinner to be like the dominant guy in the household, to be the man. And in some cases, I guess I could agree, but I certainly wouldn't suggest that for the majority. So my husband was very passive and aggressive, or passive aggressive, and expected me to do a lot of the bad cop duties with the kids. I started feeling fed up and tired of always being the villain. I was tired of always carrying the load, paying the college tuition, paying the credit card bills, working ridiculous hours, and no amount of talking ever changed anything. It erupted into vicious fights. Eventually, I had enough. One business trip, I met a man at an airport bar and banged him in the bathroom. I got divorced 7 years later, but for the aforementioned reasons, not my airport rendezvous. So, again, lots of rationalizations and justifications, but I would say, from a guy's perspective, this is why I probably wouldn't want to be making less than the woman because you risk having it be this frame. My little sister has said to me before she would never date a guy that made less money than her. And she ended up marrying a guy that made more money than her. Now, that's her prerogative. She can do whatever she would like. But I feel like there's probably more women that think like her than the other way around. And at least she's honest about it. Now, there are some women that might think they don't think like that. But then when they're in it, they find themselves thinking more and more like this woman, getting a little fed up, feeling like they're the one that has to share more of the responsibility and is doing more than their fair share. Like I said, it just kind of puts things in a bad frame for the guy. So I'd be really careful. And hopefully I can talk about this stuff with Ryan Stone. I think we could have a productive conversation with it. So that's the end of this article. And now we're going to move on to the Huffington Post article here. There we go. So we're going to open up the Huffington Post article. All right, there we go. So this one, a little more pro cheating for the women's sake. So let's go here. Ha! Cheating doesn't hurt everyone. A rationalization and justification for sure. I used to think people who cheated were appalling human beings. Now I do it. My life is great, and my long term partner and 3 children adore me, and I adore them. The problem is that I'm not truly happy and want other people. I feel trapped and have spoken to my partner about it all, but he doesn't want me to leave and freaks out and gets really, really upset. It kills me. So, what does this sound like? It sounds like she settled perhaps in a marriage or a beta bucks kind of guy, and now she feels trapped. She's not really super into him, and we have this. I spent years questioning my feelings and have been batting away attention from other men for so long. One day it dawned on me. My emotions won't stop, so what is the point? Just do it. Her hamster justified it to herself, and here we go. I've engaged in 2 emotional affairs recently and kissed them, but never slept with anyone. I might in future. I don't feel bad most of the time, which is surprising. I thought I would. Now, again, this is where I think guys can be a little different than girls, where I think there are guys that do feel more guilt in some of these regards, but when a woman gives herself enough reasons, the guilt can just go right away. Here is my dilemma. Do I leave and utterly destroy my partner's world and that of my children and wider family for passion and a deep connection I can't get at home? Or do I stay like a beautiful doll trapped in a beautiful world and at the same time hide a secret? The latter doesn't hurt anyone. Now, this is something that probably more common than a lot of people would like to admit because this guy sounds like a great guy. He's the great guy. He just probably won't blow her back out. That's really what's going on here. He's not the guy that's exciting. He's not the Chad. He's just the boring guy, and she wants more. So, but notice they don't want to cheat. Like they don't want to break up, I should say. They'd rather do this. Now, maybe she'll ask about opening up the relationship, but as a guy, would you be okay with that? Just being the guy that she's not going to have fun and excitement with, but the guy that's just her steady person, I really wouldn't. It was a last ditch effort to get a reaction. I cheated on my boyfriend of 4 years when I knew the relationship was headed down the drain. It was a last ditch effort to get a reaction out of him and see if he cared. That's one hell of a way to see if he cared. He didn't, so that gave me my answer. I was also in a lot of denial about the end of our relationship and terrified of the prospect of being single again, mostly because I'd been out of the game for so long and felt completely disconnected from the single life. I think I wanted to prove to myself that the dating world was still out there and it was still available to me and that there were men who would want me. I don't recommend cheating as a way to find those things out because it is messy, and even if the other person acts like they don't care, it still affects them in some way, but be it their ability to trust or their feelings about themselves. Just the act of doing it erases any justification you had for doing it because you're the bad guy by default. So at least she's got a little self awareness of what's going on and the frame of it. The cheater is always the D in the end. But it did make me see cheating in a different way. That cheaters are not immediately evil, and it's worth exploring someone's motive for doing it. I wonder if she would give the same alibi and excuses to a man that was cheating on a woman. Now, if the story about Adam Levine and his wife are any indication, maybe not, because people were really dragging Adam for that. And he's certainly not the first, but they really took it to him. So even if it's still a crap thing to do, being able to understand why someone did it is crucial to being able to forgive them and forgive yourself. And you can't help to move on or heal if you don't understand that. So you got to know the motive. And again, I wonder if she would extend the same courtesy to dudes that were cheating, or would it only be the same courtesy to other women? Damn good question. So this will be the last one here. I think this is one of the most brutal ones here. I just felt it just felt so freeing. I think one of the reasons that I cheated is because I wanted to feel seen. I wanted to feel desirable. I've been married to my partner for 2 years, but we've been together for about 9. They're really high achieving, they're really accomplished. And so oftentimes when we meet people or are hanging out with friends, it feels like it's all about them and all the great things that they're doing. It often felt like I fell into the shadows, or I really assumed this role where people just saw me as, oh, that person's wife. So, more explanations and rationalizations about what was going on, didn't feel seen, heard, or desirable. I think over time it just took a toll. And so when I went on a holiday with one of my friends, it was just really nice to be seen as just me. I know that it was really selfish, but at the time it just felt so freeing. And so I didn't really think about what the ramifications would be. Also, I'm in a same sex relationship, and up until that point, I hadn't really been with a man before, and that was really something I was curious about. So when the opportunity came about, I went for it. Now, again, vacation with friends, people can say all they want about those, but that is absolutely when women cheat, and guys too, probably, when they do, if they can. The only really difference is it's just so much easier for women to cheat, especially in this day and age. So, a woman's out there, all she has to do is say yes, and she can cheat. It showed me there was a lot of insecurity and self doubt I needed to deal with on my own. It was beneficial, again, saying it's beneficial, probably hurting someone else, because it really helped me see how unhappy I was with myself, and that was impacting the relationship that I had with my partner. Again, all about her, all about how she feels and her selfishness. And if there was a common denominator amongst all of these stories, yeah, if there's a common denominator amongst all of these stories, that was it. That was it, really. It was that they're all very selfish, thinking about themselves, and they weren't thinking about the other person. I mean, the stand up thing to do here would be to break up. But it's not just the women. The guys played a role in some of these stories too. The one that asked if the relationship could be opened up, that's a red flag. The one that actually told them they did cheat and they accepted it and then it continued to happen again, red flag, not too good. So these are the kinds of things that happen. And again, this is not because men do these things too. It's not just women that do these things, but I know mostly men watch this channel. So I wanted to let them know this is what could be happening out there, but take care of your side of the street first. I always want people to realize that as the utmost message on this channel. Personal responsibility, take care of your side of the street first. Got some interesting comments up here. Let's see what they say. So Elena says, hey, Radical, notice how it's never a woman's fault. Sorry, I didn't realize you were doing a video today. True. And then we got that. The guilt goes away if she can justify her life choices, correct? Feels before reels. Gotta love that too, right? Now, granted, there's guys I know that said that I really respected and they went to 12-step fellowships. Feelings are not a good indicator of how we are really doing. And I think that's a telling thing to say. And it's a wise thing to say because sometimes when we're feeling great, we might actually be doing terribly, be acting selfishly and hurting other people. But sometimes the right way, the righteous way, is the way where we're not feeling too good. And sometimes you got to go through the desert, as Jordan Peterson would say, and it's not comfortable. But if we're going to grow, there's going to be some uncomfortability. And it's like that quote I said before, there's no growth in the comfort zone, and there's no comfort in the growth zone. So just because we're not feeling good does not mean we're not doing well. And just because we do feel good and we are on kind of feeling on cloud nine doesn't mean we're doing good either. So just something to think about. But with that, thanks very much for watching, everyone. I think that was a very educational and informative couple articles there just to get into women's mindsets about why they're cheating and to learn about what the guys in the situations did there too. So interesting stuff. And I applaud the women's honesty on those sites. So thanks for watching, everybody.